Welcome to a presentation on my philosophy of learning. Now, first of all, we're talking about learning, not teaching. And that's because it's all about us, and in your case, you as a learner. The teacher is really like a catalyst in a chemical reaction. In other words, it's not part of the component or the chemicals going into the final product, and it's also not part of the final product. Rather, what a teacher is a facilitator, and that's just like what a catalyst is, well, chemically speaking. So now, how do we learn? Well, our brains are wired to recognize patterns. And that will be also true even when those patterns don't exist. And in fact, that's sometimes where we can go a little bit awry with our thinking processes. But these patterns help us recognize trends and connections rapidly. So we're very good at seeing things, forecasting things, and that's part of our background in nature, and that's why we have things such as déjà vu, in fact. And they help us to make those predictions, and that's very important for us to survive and to understand the world around us. Now, learning something new almost always in turn entails the arranging of new information into patterns. That's the whole idea. So what is the challenge? Well, the most efficient way of learning is to put new information into pre-existing patterns that we are familiar with. So something looks similar to what we've seen before, and it's very easy to integrate it. So now to the method. So we break down each new idea into its simplest or the most simple and basic ideas. And by doing that, first of all, we'll connect it to patterns we're familiar with and that we've already learned. And that way we can ingrain it into our system and things make sense. And the test of doing that is then imagining explaining it to yourself as if you were a 14 or 15-year-old. Now, of course, I'm making an assumption here that I'm talking to people who are older than 14 or 15, but this would also even work for younger people. The idea is to explain it to a younger version of yourself. Or on the other hand, you could, the best way of looking at it is to actually explain it to someone, to a younger person, a niece, a nephew, a cousin, a sibling. Another option is explain it to your grandparents if they have no familiarity with the topic. So that's another way of doing it. And if you can explain it in those simple terms, then you know that you have made those kind of connections where things make sense. And that's the idea. And by explaining it either to yourself or even better to other people, you'll end up having to answer the one question that you should not fear, and that is why. Because that's something that says, well, it has to make sense. Just telling me that I have to take this number, multiply it by that, or I have to make this move after the other move shouldn't be good enough. There should be a reason and a deeper understanding for the reason why. And on this note, actually, I have a great video that was, it's an interview with Dr. Richard Feynman, the Nobel awarded physicist, and he talks about that question, why, in the context of magnetism. And it's quite fascinating. It's going to be it's on the notes to this presentation. And so the goal is to create a simple or the simplest pattern for yourself. And this is the hard part. This is really if you do it successfully, you'll find the topic itself or whatever you're trying to learn will become, quote, easy. Not necessarily in a real sense, but it will seem easy to you. The real challenge is not remembering what to do or how something is done, but actually figuring out what is the simplest pattern so it makes sense to you and then seems easy. Now that really is the challenge, and that's where we have to put in the work, each of us as learners. But the thing is, when you find that pattern, the knowledge does seem to become easy. And most importantly, then also with very little practice, you'll find that it's a building block that you can use. So you can build on that learning. Because one of the big problems we have is we learn something new, particularly if we're writing exams, and then shortly thereafter, we tend to forget all the main ideas. Now, we tend to forget details anyway, But if we figure out a pattern that makes sense and the concept makes sense, then what happens is we can easily build on it. And if we forget certain details, it's very easy to recall them later on as well. So that's the real huge benefit of this method. So thank you for your attention, and I hope that helped.